Hi everybody, I'm Karunakar Marsakatla. Today we're going to talk about Manvantara cycles and the relation to the supercontinent cycles about the research I did a while ago. Before going into the talk, a little bit about me. I'm originally from Telangana. I did my BE in Computer Science and Engineering from Osmania University. Currently, I'm living in California, working in IT. Other research works I did, even though I work in IT, I have a passion for uh, theoretical exploration of natural world. So, as part of my own initiative, I did a couple of projects. This was the first one. I did it in between 2000 and 2002, and I wrote a book called Gravity from a New Angle in 2009. And also why there is a deficit in mass in nucleus, that was published in Prepress Time Journal 2010, and why we have wrinkles when we wet our hands, we have wrinkles. So I wrote an article, co-wrote the article with another researcher and published on the Peer preprints. That's about me. And going into the presentation, I divided the presentation into a couple of sections. First, we talk about the introduction, and then about my theory and how I developed it. And then later, we see what are the current developments in the field at sciences that support my theory, and what further research is required in the future. And I summarize the talk, and then we'll see what next. So the introduction, we have in our ancient Indian texts, day of Brahma, the creation, or the night of the Brahma, dissolution, is defined as one kalpa. So kalpa is 14 manvantara cycles plus 15 sandhikalas, one in the beginning of each manvantara and one at the end of the manvantara. So Sandhikala period is equal to one Kruta Yuga period. So Manvantara consists of 71 Mahayugas. So that comes out to be 306 million years. And Mahayuga is, everybody knows this, Krita, Treta, Dwapar, Kali, and that total comes out to be 433, 320,000 years. So so far, according to our text, 6 Manvantara cycles have been elapsed, and the present is the 7th cycle. And before each cycle, there will be a global deluge equal to a period of Krita Yuga. So, when you say global deluge, there is it has to be somewhere recorded in the Earth history. Earth history is, there are plenty of global deluges, ice ages, global warming, and flooding, volcanism. Everything is recorded in the Earth history. This is the picture I took when I last time went to Grand Canyon. You see the layers; those are the depiction of either ice age or volcanism or global warming. All these things. When our ancestors talked about the global deluge in the Manvantara cycle, um, that has to be somewhere. It has to be recorded. Where is it? That's what we're going to explore in this talk. And when we look at the Earth history according to the ancient Indian text on the top, and Earth history according to the geological time scale in the bottom, when you look at the present age on the left, it's present 0 million years, and then let's look at the according to the ancient Indian text. Like present is 0 million years. We are in the Kali Yuga, and 28th Mahayuga of 7th Manvantara. So 7th Manvantara started around approximately 122 million years ago, and then 6th Manvantara started around 430 million years ago. And in between each Manvantara period, is including the Sandhikala, is 308 million years. When you look at the Earth history, we have each era a period of the Earth history clearly studied and well documented in the science. When you look at the latest global deluge happened with the Vaivasvat Manu in the beginning of the seventh Manvantara, it is between 66 and 145 million years. So when you see there is no particular demarcation in the geological history. Where is the global deluge recorded then? And when you look at the sixth Manvantara, that is also falling between Silurian period. The earlier one was in between Cretaceous period. So both are falling in between the geological periods. So it can't be true. So what they mean by global deluge in our ancient texts? That is the question we are trying to answer in this presentation. And I started this research when I read an article called Snowball Earth in Scientific American in January 2000. There's a new issue of the magazine. I saw the article. So the article says that Earth covered in thick ice sheets from poles to the almost equator, and it came out of it after a couple of million years. And also that coincided with supercontinental period. So the concept of Earth covering, right now only we have ice in Antarctica and as well as in Arctic regions. But in the snowball Earth scenario, entire Earth is covered almost close to the equator in thick ice sheets. That intrigued me. So it happens with the supercontinent formation. How the supercontinent is when all the continents come together to form a supercontinent. What happens when a supercontinent forms? See, the blue one is one of the plate, and then the red one is another plate. This is plate tectonics theory. Like Himalayas, Eurasian is you can say that red one, and the Indian plate is going under the Eurasian plate. And then when they collide together, we have mountains. And then same time, there's a concept called subduction. Uh, when mountain building and subduction stops, there is no new ocean crust gets created. So I coined the term as a tectonic pause. When all the continents collide, there is no movement of plates anymore. That's what tectonic pause is. So plate tectonics, until that time, all the mainstream understanding was that plate tectonics is a continuous process. Even though Earth formed in 4,400 million years ago, whenever it started the plate tectonics, the understanding at the time was plate tectonics is a continuous process. But my discovery, I came up with a process where plate tectonics completely stops when the supercontinent forms. I termed it as a tectonic pause. And what happens? There is another boundary in plate tectonics where the plates move apart from each other. So when the plates move apart from each other, a magma comes up in between them, creates a new crust, and also that helps the dissipation of heat from inside the Earth. So what happens when there is a tectonic pause? So in earlier video I showed you when all the continents collide to form a tectonic pause, supercontinent, all these vents will be closed, all the ridges will be closed to form one single plate. And then in that, less heat will be emanated from the inside the Earth, and then glacial cycles advance towards the tropics. Because glacial cycles normally advance and retreat every 100,000 years. But what happens when supercontinent forms, because less heat is emanating from the inside of the Earth, glacial cycles advance towards the equator. In multiple cycles, When the less heat is coming from the inside the Earth, glacial cycles advance toward the tropics. That's how the snowball Earth event um, occurs. When supercontinent breaks up, whatever the volcanism that melts the ice sheets and then creates a global flood. Rapid melting of the ice sheets creates the global flood. So during the global flood, there will be mass extinction because of the global warming, global flooding. All these events cause mass extinction. That's what consequences of the tectonic pause. And also, there are two more articles that helped me formulate my theory. The first one, it is indication of to the start of the plate tectonics around 28 million years ago. Because what they found was there's intense magnetic record, paleomagnetic data um, around that time. So that means like there's a lot of activity inside the Earth. So that's where the plate tectonics is the process of cooling the Earth. So when before that it was all one plate, and then around that time it broke into different plates and started cooling the Earth. So, and then the second one is there's a formation of interchange of megablobs and troughs in a mantle. So how they describe the plate tectonics is there's earth, two blobs will be on the one side and the troughs will be the other side. Blobs will push the plates to the one side, and then while they interchange, the came back to form the supercontinent. So this is you can read my articles in detail, but this is basically in concise form how the plate tectonics works. And so the what is the cause and origin of the plate tectonics? The cause is origin is nucleation of the inner core. The Earth is divided into different layers. One is core, mantle, and then crust. Crust is where all the plates are divided, and then those are the ones that move. And start of plate tectonics is around 28 million years ago, 2800 million years ago. That is when inner core was started to form. Um, Inner core was started. That's how we know that there's intense tectonic activity. That is the beginning of the plate tectonics. And the inner core, as well as the galactic revolutions, around the Vishnu Nabi or galactic center, is also the cause of the plate tectonics. That's how I proposed. So two galactic revolutions equal to one tectonic supercontinent cycle. So if the plate tectonics started around 2800 million years ago, how many supercontinents formed? So we have a supercontinent cycle equal to 425 million years, and breakup of first supercontinent and start of the plate tectonics is around 2800 million years ago. So based on that, if you calculate, there were 6 complete cycles from 2800 million years ago to 250 million years ago. So they are one is 2800, 2375, 1950, 1525, 1100, and 675 and 250. So supercontinent Rodinia broke apart around 675 million years ago. That is one of the supercontinent, and that's where a snowball and a global flooding happened. And then latest one is supercontinent is Pangea. So that broke apart around 250 million years ago. That's also caused a snowball earth and mass extinction and flooding. So to summarize what is the supercontinent cycles, we have a couple of points here. So from the starting of the plate tectonics, even the Earth formed around 4,400 million years ago. Until 2,800 million years ago, there is no tectonic activity. That's when the intense tectonic activity started. So from that point onwards, there are 6 complete cycles, and then we are in the current one is in the 7th cycle, and we are in the middle of the 7th cycle. So basically, and snowball earth flooding lasted for 5 to 10 million years. Whenever the supercontinent forms, and then when it breaks up, the snowball earth event uh, due to the global warming of the volcanism, the flood lasts for almost like 5 to 10 million years. That's what the researchers found. And 90% of the species were extinct during the breakup of Pangaea, 7th supercontinent, around 250 million years ago. So that means supercontinent forms, snowball earth event happens, it breaks apart, snowball melts, and then flood in the next flooding, a lot of mass extinction happens. So in the geological timescales, there are ice ages and other periods, but the supercontinent cycle is the largest known cycle in the geological timescales. That lasts for 425 million years. And there will be 7 more supercontinent cycles before Sun explodes in supernova. Because 2800 million years is like 3 billion years almost, and 3 billion years from now, that's when sun fuel in the sun exhausts, and then it will explode in the supernova. So until the sun, there is a life in the sun in the future, whatever the life left in the sun, in that time there are 7 more supercontinents uh, going to happen. And then it's a true global flood when all continents were together. That's when the supercontinental and global flood happened. Now let's look at the what our ancient texts told about Manvantara cycles. And there were 6 complete cycles, and then current one is the 7th one. And then we are in the middle of the 7th cycle, 28th Mahayuga, and then a global flood equal to Krita Yuga. They said it's 1.73 million years of flooding. And the current, according to the science, it could be 5 to 10 million years, almost close there. And species that were got onto the ship with Vaivaswata Manu survived. The rest all perished in around 120 million years ago. So that's what the mass extinction is. They were trying to convey in the ancient texts. Concept of the ship, and then somebody taking each species, one pair of each species into the ship, and trying to save them for 1.73 million years is not possible. What our ancient text is trying to say is that a lot of species going to extinct during that time. And that's what happened. 90% of the species died off in the supercontinental breakup period. And largest cycle described to happen on the surface of the Earth with a duration of 307 million years. So after Kalpa, so this is the largest cycle. Kalpa is totally different concept, but according to the Earth level, the Manvantara cycle is the one that is the largest cycle. And apart from current Manu, there are 7 more Manus to come in the future, according to Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's what they said. And then ship ventured into open ocean to escape from flooding on the land. So the flooding ancient text talked about, it's not a tsunami, it's not a local river flooding, it's not a rain or something. They basically, everybody got into the boat, whatever the ship or boat, and then went into the ocean. They didn't try to stay on the land. So that means it has to be a global flooding. So when you look at the supercontinent cycles and the Manvantara cycles, there are striking similarities between these two. And then only the difference between the Manvantara cycles and supercontinent cycles is how long they are. So Manvantara cycles are 308 million years, and then supercontinent cycles are 425 million years. But So, and Manvantara cycles basically ancient text, how they calculated is about the revolutions of the earth around the sun. How the geological timescales are calculated is based on the radioactive decay of the whatever the elements they found in the earth layers. So one is based on revolutions, one is based on radioactive decay. There is a possibility that somewhere there, um, uh, there's a possibility for them to differ in how they calculated the time. And I hope in the future we will be able to reconcile Manvantara cycles, the duration, and then supercontinental duration. Apart from that small difference, we have tons of comparative striking similarities. So based on that, I concluded in my research that Manvantara cycles are in fact supercontinent cycles. So ancient Indian text timescales in terms of geological timescales. Now we know that supercontinent cycles are Manvantara cycles. Let's compare the what we have in the ancient text with what is actually happening in the geological timescales. So day of Brahma equals to beginning of the first supercontinent to the end of the 14th supercontinent. And the night of the Brahma is from the end of the 14th supercontinent to beginning of the first supercontinent after the formation of the next planetary system following the supernova. When sun explodes, it basically vaporizes all the planets. And then um, again, sun again collapses back into a new star, and then new planets form around the sun. Within that, maybe another Earth in the future Earth. Again, when the first continent, the first supercontinent cycle starts, that is what the night of the Brahma is. So one day of the Brahma equal to lifespan of the sun. Sun switches on. That is the day of the Brahma. When it goes back into chaos in the supernova, that is the night time of the Brahma. So these are the concepts our ancient texts talk about. Present Kalpa, even they named the present Kalpa. It is Shvetavaraha Kalpa. It started around 28 million years ago with the breakup of the first supercontinent. They also named, I think, 50 other kalpas that is coming up in the future. Now, when you look at the day of Brahma, so it's basically 2800 million years ago it started, and then it goes to 3 billion years from now. So it's basically 6 billion years of time. That is what the day of Brahma, that is what the productive period of the sun. So at least according to the ancient Indian calculation, so beginning when you look at on the top of the scale, beginning of the first Manvantara is 2800 million years ago, breakup of the first supercontinent. And beginning of seventh Manvantara is Permian and Triassic boundary, breakup of Pangaea, 250 million years ago. And then Kali Yuga, so 28th Mahayuga, we are right there. This is the present age. And then the future, beginning of 8th Manvantara, there will be all the continents we have, all the continents are separated. They come back together to form another continent, supercontinent, in another 250 million years. And then there will be another snowball Earth, and then it breaks up, and then another flood. That's when happens in the 250 million years. And then next in 3000 million years from now, 3 billion years, there will be end of the 14th Manvantara, and that time sun will explode in the supernova. That is the comparison between our ancient Indian texts and then in geological timescales. That is the day of the Brahma. And the night of the Brahma is, as I told you, the beginning of Pralaya. Pralaya, they describe the Pralaya is the after the end of the 14th Manvantara, the Pralaya starts. And that is from that point onwards, that's where the sun explodes in supernova. and then evaporation of all the planets into planetesimals, and then there will be chaos for 4 billion years, and then new sun forms, and then planet starts to forming 4,000 million years, 4,500 million years from that point onwards, and then again another 6,000 million years, beginning of the first Manvantara and the next new Earth, and then that is the breakup of the first supercontinent and start of the plate tectonics on the new Earth. Well, so basically, from the beginning of the first supercontinent in this Earth to end of the 14th supercontinent is the day of the Brahma, that's 6 billion years. From the end of the 14th supercontinent and back to the new planetary system, and then start of the first supercontinent is the night of the Brahma. And then description, I just read the Mahabhagavatam a couple of days back because I didn't know that these were there in the text when I researched 20 years ago. And then Skanda 12 and then chapter 4 is complete description of how supernova happens. Now, when you go back to read all these ancient texts, keep in mind when they say Manvantara cycle is a supercontinent cycle. When the first Manvantara cycle is 2,800 million years ago. Looking at all those time scales, when you read these ancient texts, they make sense to you. And then Vaivasvata Manu is the 7th Manu period, is what the breakup of Pangaea, and that's what global deluge happened. And beginning of the Triassic period, that's in 250 million years ago. And Swayambhu Manu, first Manu, is the breakup of first supercontinent, start of the plate tectonics around 2,800 million years ago, and first life from that, whatever it need not be a human being. When they say Swayambhu means firstborn Manu, it could be any life form that came from the oceans onto the land. That could be the Swayambhu Manu. And then so we could see extensive description of the past and future Manvantaras in the Vyasa Maharshi written Srimad Bhagavatam. And not only in our ancient Indian texts, there is flood stories are everywhere. In every culture we have flood stories, and even in the Hebrew text there is a concept called 7 Earths. They say that Noah saved the species in an ark from the great flood, and then 7 concentric Earths, one above the other, each separated by the ocean. And then Noah crossed the ocean between 6th and 7th Earth. So Noah is basically, when you look at the top layer, orange is kind of Earth, and then blue is the ocean, and that's how I draw it. And then Noah crossed between the blue, between the 6th Earth and across the ocean, same concept. Between the 6th Earth, they gathered all the animals and then crossed the ocean and came into the 7th Earth. So they basically summarized what Manvantara cycles and ancient texts talked about. There are 7 supercontinents, 6 supercontinents in the past, and then presently the 7th supercontinent cycle and 7th Manvantara. They also trying to say the same 7th Earth, and they were lost previous 6 Earths. And there are striking similarities between the 7 Earth concept and Manvantara cycles, and then supercontinent cycles. Not only the Manvantara cycle, Zoroastrian texts, they call about 7 Karshvars, and they also saying that there are 7 Karshvars, each separated by ocean, and these were described as concentric circles, one above the other. The present is, they call Hanirata, is the 7th and largest one, and this is the only Karshvar inhabited by humans. That is also similar to supercontinent cycles and Manvantara cycles. And that's how I proposed my theory. And in 2000, between 2000 and 2002, that time I tried to publish in the film journals, but couldn't able to publish. So I decided I posted them in GeoCities website. That is, people call that as first social network site. That time, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter was not there. Everybody uh, who were any did any documentation or writing, they used to go to GeoCities and create their website and then post their work in there. So I posted my work, and I wrote on my theory in 3 articles. One is the tectonic pause towards the unification of Earth sciences. That describes how the plate tectonics forms as a supercontinent, snowball Earth and the global deluge, and mass extinction happens, and then comparison with Manvantara cycles. And the second article is Cause, Origin, and Continuation of Plate Tectonics. This talks about how the plate tectonics originated, what is the cause behind it, and then how long it will continue in the future. So this is where I talked about galactic revolutions in that article. And the third article is Earth history from the ancient texts and its relevance to the science. This is where I compared Manvantara cycles with 7 eighths from Hebrew texts, and then 7 Perswars from uh, Zoroastrian texts. So that site is no longer there. So I created my own website and posted the site in that link. And those 3 articles also there available on Wixra preprint server. I posted this when I posted this in 2000, between 2000 2002. I submitted my article to many different places. So this is one of the forum where they talk about climate um, researchers, and then I sent to one of these researcher, and then he posted in that link. And then I posted that in the Yahoo Indology group as well. That's basically when it started, and all the Indologists almost around that time were part of the members of that group. And recently they closed that one also. That's thanks to Yahoo. They closed the GeoCities as well as the Indology group, and then they sent the files to everybody, and you can see my post from that period. And one of the member interacted with me, and you can see the conversation I had with the member. And this is people go to Reddit now. Most of the people go to Reddit, but in 2000, around that time, people go to news groups. That is now Google groups. Talk Origins. I posted one of those about my theory, and that was one of response from one of the members. And this is a science sci.geo.geology. In that group also I posted and discussed my theories. And when you look at the what is the latest theories, latest research after I posted my theory, there's an article called Intermittent Plate Tectonics. They say that like a plate tectonics is not a continuous process. It stopped at some point and then started again. Basically proved my tectonics concept in that research. And then there is these 2 articles. They basically proves the significant event occurred around 2800 million years ago. That is the first supercontinental breakup and start of the plate tectonics. And this one talks about the possibility of 6 supercontinent cycles in the past. So you can read that article as well. And so I did my research around 2000, and I posted all my articles there. And I thought I could contribute. I contributed as much as I could. There's nothing to add to that. Then why I came now to do this presentation? Um, Recently, I also kind of uh, signed up for Kriya lessons through SRF, Paramahansa Yogananda lessons. In one of the lessons, the lesson number 9, God and the Universe, Yogananda wrote that like each day of creation after the first day is actually a cycle comprising perhaps millions of years. That struck me. Is basically what Yogananda is saying is about the research what I did a while ago. Uh, he was describing that statement when he was talking about uh, creation according to Genesis. What they say is the 6 days the creation, God created the universe, created the earth, and then seventh day he basically rested. That is not a coincidence. So 6 days are past six supercontinent cycles, same Manvantara cycle, same seven, same Karshvars. And the seventh day when God rested is the present supercontinent cycle that's going on. Even according to the Genesis, also it is basically talking about the supercontinent cycles and then Manvantara cycles. And when I realized that, I thought like I need to go back and then revisit my theory and then present my theory in some platform. Thankfully, I communicated with Rahul, and then he immediately came back and accepted my proposal. And another thing is, when I proposed my theory, I didn't know how ancestors came about. This these are long stays. Like they talked about what happened 2,800 million years ago, how they came up with. I thought like maybe they are some kind of advanced being. Somehow they did research, but that is not the case. According to the, I read a lot of books on written by Paramahansa Yogananda, and he took the Kriya lessons. I am a Kriya bound now for the past 2 months, 3 months from February. And in that lessons, it talks about how the rishis knows all the inner workings of the universe and the sun and everything. They basically do the tapas, and then they realize the inner working. They didn't do any research. So that time I didn't have the clue how they did it. So one of the posts I wrote, we can't even explain using the present concepts in science about how they arrived at that conclusion. I was clueless. But after going through the lessons and reading from these books, I now know that they did with realized with the tapas. So using this, with this realization, like how they came out thing, and then the comparison about the Genesis, and I thought like I will need to express my research again. And then so from this, only thing we can see the difference between the supercontinent cycles and Manvantara cycles is the gap, the duration. That is the only difference you can see between these things. Maybe yeah, in the future, I think we might be able to fill that gap with new research, and and we can see clear comparison between Manvantara cycles and then seven Karswars, even the Genesis, is the same as the supercontinent cycles. So our ancestors, Manvantara cycle, is that the origin for all these ancient flood stories that needs to be looked into. So to summarize my talk, basically, so the supercontinent, first supercontinent started around 28 million years ago with the start of the plate tectonics. That is the first Manvantara, and then start of the Kalpa as well. That is the starting of the Kalpa, Svetavara Kalpa. And from then, six complete cycles, supercontinent cycles completed. Currently, the seventh, similar to the Manvantara cycles, and each cycle begins with an ice age and a global deluge. So plate tectonics itself could be the result of revolutions and around the galactic center, Vishnu Nabi. So that is also possible. How they come up with this kind of detailed information about the universe is mind blowing. And so what next? What we can do next? So ancient Indian texts, but I did the lead research. I read so many texts, and then I can say for confidence that their treasure trove of geological information. There is a lot of research we could do um, by reading these stories. Not only I know I read so many talks and research about astronomical information in this text, but geological is even more information encoded in those texts. Astronomically, we can go what like 10,000 15, maybe 20,000, 50,000 back. But when you look at the stories in those texts, we can go millions of years back into the earth and then see what they were talking about those events. My hope is that one day we'll make the geology and then astronomy even in the high school level, and then they should be studied in conjunction with the ancient texts. Put Srimad Bhagavatam, Manusmriti, and plate tectonics, geology, astronomy together, students should be able to study. That's my hope. And someday we'll see, I hope we'll see that kind of environment. And with that, I'll end the talk. I thank Sangam for giving me the opportunity. And then those are my links. I can available on the Twitter, email, homepage, and then Wixta. In the last link, you can see all my articles are posted in that link. And with that, I'll end my talk. Back to you, Rahul.
Have you seen any work or do you collaborate with Raj Vedam, Dr. Raj Vedam, who's in Houston at all?
Yeah, I saw his because when I basically started Kriya lessons last year, only last year, and that time my interest go into seeing all these videos, and that's how Srijan, I came to know about Srijan and everything. You talked about in one of the videos like these huge numbers, and we wondered what happened, but I never collaborated with you. Maybe yeah, in the future I like these presentations. Maybe in
Yeah.
the future, maybe I might be collaborate with you.
Both
No issue.
Nilesh Oak and Raj Vedam. I think it'll be
Yeah,
good for you to.
yeah. They're really worth
And
their work is really commendable.
something
And
very interesting that Raj Vedam, he delivered a talk recently, just 2 weeks back, on once again online, and he mentioned something very interesting that you mentioned the day of Brahma and night of Brahma as the sun being born and dying. He actually went into the entire universe itself, and he said that the creation of the universe also is cyclical. And he talked about a very interesting concept that perhaps the universe also has a vasana of being born again and repeating the whole cycle again. It was very, very fascinating, just like your talk. So I do think
right.
that you all should collaborate maybe. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. I attended the talk. Yeah, that was it's a possibility. Yeah, ancient text. Not only the talk, like they say when they say Brahma is 50 years old, and then this is the first day of his 51st year. They are talking about huge numbers in the past, and then they have. So it's a vast history of the universe, and there's a lot to do when we look further in detail. Yeah, definitely collaborate in the future.
Just to let you know, like I can 1000% relate to your this presentation, because like I'm into extensive studies of our ancient scriptures. Like you said, Bhagavad Puran also. In fact, in Vishnu Puran also, this is, I mean, all these data are there. So like I'm feeling, very angry. In fact, like how to take this forward. I mean, in the name of education, especially in India, like we are really not teaching kids to apply their mind to make their mind diversified. And I don't know what, like, because if you see, like, in fact the West, they are digesting all this stuff which is already written in our text. And in fact, like, just apply your normal mind, so you will find like all these texts, they were somehow, I would say, inspired from our ancient text, and they wrote a new branch of it and all that stuff. Like how to go forward with it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think sorry, I have said Srijan. So Sarayu and Rohit could make a contribution in that case. Yeah, we need to do a lot of work in this, because till now we could say that like this is what, and then they just simply say this is all nonsense. Whatever you people talk about nonsense, and I say that I posted my theory 20 years ago. Nobody criticized me, and then moreover, all the research what I did became the real science. As I showed you, most of the articles after that uh, basically said whatever I said. So we can clearly convey them that this is real science. This is real science, and they need to pay attention to, and they will pay attention to. I think Sarah, you can play a role in this. We'll see what we can do.
Says, I'm Venkatesh from Bengaluru. Question is, in his book, The Holy Science, Swami Yukteswar Giri, Guru of Swami Yogananda, explains that we are in the Dwapar Yuga. However, we chant in our daily Sandhya Bandham that we are in the Kali Yuga. Can you throw
Right.
some light on this conundrum, please?
All right. Yeah, I hope no. Yeah, I read the Holy Science. I read a lot of other books by Yogananda, and I have that book, and I know I'm aware that Yukteswar, Swami Yukteswar wrote about 12,000 year cycle for the Mahayuga instead of 4,320,000. So when you add up 12,000 as the cycle, and when you say 71 Mahayugas for Manvantara, and then 7 Manvantaras, I calculated here. I know the question is going to come up. So it's going to be, each Manvantara cycle is 852,000 years. That cannot be possible. Not just 1 million. So when you look at the total elapsed time from the first beginning of the Kalpa, it is just coming to 5 million years. So the yugas talked about in holy science is very, very um, small numbers. And then when you look at the earth history, it goes into billions of years. And that cannot be true, unfortunately. So because whatever I take, whatever these there in the Surya Siddhanta, whatever there in the Manusmriti, whatever there in the Srimad Bhagavatam, I take those descriptions as a base and did my research. And unfortunately, probably that might not be the truth.